So this book is not really a how-to, and I'd leave that up to other people. You can find other books that'll tell you how to do long distance hikes. There's some wonderful books that are written about that. This is a really, the time I hiked it, even in 2013, not many people were hiking. Even in 2012, only 10 people completed it in 2012. So there's a lot more people trying to hike it now, probably because of Guthook's app that was not available when I did it in 2013. I think he had just written the AT Guthook guides, which then went to Atlas guides, which now is called Far Out. But everybody that I know still calls it Guthook. This shows maps of those 3 trails. Yeah. So numbers that this is in 2013, and it's not much different for the first two, for the first one right now, the Appalachian Trail. But after Cheryl Strayed wrote a book called Wild, this number of 300 people that hiked the Pacific Crest Trail skyrocketed. And the year that I hiked, there was only about 30 people, maybe a few more, that were completing it. So, it's just a testament to how hard it really was. Oh God. Jesus, oh my goodness.
What are you doing?
Hey, get off the phone. Jesus. All right. All right, let's move on here. When I hiked this trail, I invited and we collaborated with the 3 guys on the left. These guys were seasoned hikers. We are a team. We approached this as a team, and I wanted a really good team to hike with. I'd learned that on the PCT. I didn't want to do this hike alone because of a lot of reasons. But on the left is Alan Widmeyer, AKA Train. These are trail names I'll give you afterwards. And he hiked with me on the Pacific Crest Trail. And then the 2 guys in the center, we completed the AT together, and then 3 years later, we combined forces and managed to through hike the PCT. And then 3 years later, in 2013, we hiked together and we all met to start the CDT. And on the right is Brendan Drapo. He's from Maine. He goes by the name of Breeze. Oh yeah, these 2 guys on the guy with the reflective glasses is Justin Lee, goes by the trail name of General Lee. And then the guy to the right of center is Louis Lassassier, Richard Wizard. And the guy on the right, Breeze, was formerly in the military in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he was out of the service at that point, and really enjoyable guy to be. I loved having another Mainer with me. It really worked out well. So I completed this trail with Alan Widmeyer and Richard, Louis Lassassier, and Breeze. General Lee experienced some difficulties that we'll talk about, and he had to bail, in Colorado due to some sickness, really. I mean, he just got really ill. There's no shelters on the CDT. There really aren't. For people that are familiar with the trail culture of the AT, that has, I don't know, there might be, I know there's more than 100, maybe 140, maybe 170 shelters. There's exactly 0 on the Continental Divide Trail. So this is a picture of our first night out. We were in the desert already, just kind of trudging along, and it just was time to finish. And this is it. You just kind of lay down. You don't need a tent. It never rains. There aren't any insects out at night. Many people don't even use a tent for the first few weeks, maybe a month. There's no rain in this area. It was a drought. There was only less than an inch of rain that fell from January until the day we started, which was in April. So a lot of water sources were not available to us, which made the trip very challenging. But talk about wonderful bedroom pictures. It was just quite astounding. That's my tent on the left. I like that tarp tent. That's the moment. I love crawling into my tent. I've been in it so many times, and I've been inside with familiar gear that no matter how difficult my day is, or how tired I am, or how discouraged or excited I am, it always feels like a little cocoon that I can kind of crawl up in. And I am not a fan of the quilts. I want a full sleeping bag. I want to be enveloped with a zipper. I want to slide all the way in there. I want to just get away and just get warm and just get into my womb. Yeah, so this is a picture. Let me just check something out here. I want to try and get my show notes, which are not appearing here for some reason, but I've got a backup plan. So let me just get this. Okay. Here we go. All right. So a lot of people really love the desert. I didn't. I really didn't. And I think people that really love the desert never walk through it with a pack on their backs. But this is pretty much this isn't that. This is very familiar. No water, no trail, hot sun. In the desert that we hiked in, even in April, it would get over 100 degrees during the day, and it would drop down to below freezing at night. That's just how it is. This was all pre-smartphone. You can see me holding on to a piece of paper that I'm consulting here. We're not checking Facebook here. We're probably fixing things or fiddling. Oh yeah, there's my glasses, which got ripped off my head in Colorado in a windstorm and just went blowing off, even though I had, a cord around my neck. The experiences that we had out here were quite dramatic and very foreign to me in many ways, even though I was experienced at hiking in the Northeast. This is a really good water source in the New Mexico desert, and it's extremely rare. These are cow tanks that are powered by windmills that pull up water from these, I don't know how deep these wells must be. Unfortunately, most of them are dry, and so you never know until you walk over and look over the edge of these containers on whether there's water in there or not. And most of the time there wasn't. So this was really wonderful. Plus, it was the only shade around for dozens of miles. I mean, literally, there is no shade to crawl under. I'm fortunate I don't have any pictures of it, but I was advised to bring a Mylar umbrella into the desert. And I can't tell you how useful it was. That's one of my main recommendations to people if they think about hiking in the desert is bring an umbrella. You can walk you can walk with an umbrella. It's shady under there, and the air moves. You can take your hat off. It's a little cooler under there. It is a wonderful thing. You don't need to rig it up with duct tape so you don't have to carry it. I didn't mind carrying it. I mean, I would just kind of rest it on my shoulder, and it was wonderful. The other thing about the desert, as you can see in the background there, is there's nothing to obstruct your view. So it was very easy to navigate at this point. Basically, get out your compass, look north, and look way off in the distance and find some kind of object or a peak that was exactly north and walk. There was no signs for 200 miles. The first 200 miles had no natural water sources either. So we had to stash some of our own water alongside where the trail passed before we were able to walk the first 60 miles of that segment. And when there was water, this is often how it appeared. I mean, these are some examples of cow tanks, and pretty dramatic. You would just have to get water out of these things, and that's where we would take advantage of filtration. And I use the SteriPen and use ultraviolet light. These are extremes in that you had to really clean this stuff out of your water bottle before you could actually deal with it. But if you could do that through filtration first, just not even microfiltration, the chemicals that we had and the SteriPen did a very nice job. I never got sick from water. Actually, I never got sick on this whole trip, which was quite remarkable. So this is one of the problems with the trail, is that our guidebooks and our maps that we had at that point, we had paper maps, basically told us to go on these roads. And when we were walking along, we'd all of a sudden come to these fences and gates that said private property. So here's your dilemma. Okay, criminal trespass, and turn around and go somewhere where we'll just trespass the rest of the way back to where we started, or do we keep trespassing and make progress and go ahead? We would climb right over and go ahead. There was only a couple of times where landowners really approached us and got upset that we were stealing water out of their cow tanks. Now I'm talking about tanks that were 600 gallons at least, some of these tanks, at least the ones that they nailed us for. And we're taking like no more than like 2 gallons, but they were pissed. The other thing that's really interesting about this is you're not seeing much trail magic in New Mexico. And the reason why, for the CDT, it's so remote that the only people that want to live out there are really people that don't want people bugging them like us, walking through their property and their land. So it was a dicey situation. And I don't know if this is even a viable. This trail had 3 different places you could start from at the beginning around the border. This was called the Columbus route. And I don't know if this problem became so acute that they're not even using this as an start, as an alternate to this trail. But anyhow, it was aggravating to me. I mean, that's the last thing you need, is people pissed at you as you're struggling along, worried that you're going to just, really have problems. Okay, here's the first. This is Mount Taylor. It's right off the trail. It's actually right on the trail, but you do have to take a little tiny bit of a alternate route to get over the top. And this used to be a volcano. It was active up until about 1.5 million years ago. Conservative estimates. Wait a minute, where am I here? This isn't even me talking. Do you see a picture of me talking?
No,
Denise?
I don't. No, I don't. I don't know what that
Okay.
picture is.
Well, that's me. That's some kind of a slide. I don't know what that is, but that is me standing there. You can imagine this guy standing there talking. I'm not going to mess with it.
Okay.
So conservative estimates say that this volcano was approximately 25,000 feet high when it was active. The slopes are bare right now. The cone was once an important source of lumber for building pueblos, and I really had trouble getting up to 11,000. My breathing was tough here. We had to go up 2,300 feet in 2 miles, and it was slow going for me, but I was sure glad to get up there. Okay, so we got out of the desert and we took another alternate. This is called the Gila River alternate. And you cross this river about 100 times in 100 miles. It goes for 100 miles, and just like this. And sometimes the cliffs are quite high. Sometimes you're in a slot canyon, 1,000 feet, and then the river is at the bottom of that. You can see by scale on the left-hand picture, we're pulling water out of there. We're filtering out of there, and you're crossing that over and over again. and moving right along, and it was quite enjoyable. And what you really had to realize is you're not going to be taking your shoes off every time and trying to keep them dry, and then at the end when you cross to the other side, drying your feet off, putting them in socks. After 3 or 4 of these crossings, you just say, oh, I'm slogging right through. The problem with slogging right through is that it got down below freezing every night. So things that were wet, like your shoes and your boots, would freeze unless you held them right against your body, which isn't great to be having wet boots or footwear against your sleeping bag all night long. And I just remember that it was really like that it was icy in the morning, and it was slippery sometimes getting in and out of the Gila River at that point. And once we got out of the Gila, though, it was right back at it again, to the desert. And there's no trail here. We're just using our compass and paper maps, and just heading north. And this is the kind of thing that you're aiming for. We're aiming for that mesa right there, and just kind of going up that far. It's probably, I would say that's an estimated 3 or 4 miles away from where the picture was taken. And then we just kept heading north and moving through New Mexico. And really, you're making those high mileage days. Like I said, you average 19 miles a day, because if you go slower than that, if you take your time, you're going to need to carry more water. That's the chess game, is to be able to go longer miles with each quart of water. So you're reducing the weight of the work that you have to do on this freaking trail. It's quite fascinating, really. So this was an amazing thing. These are some Zuni Indians that we encountered. I am going to read from my book here about what this is all about, because this was really fascinating to me, this encounter with these guys. Okay, page 35. Okay, a most unusual occurrence occurred today. Our group had the fortune to be welcomed into a family group of Zunis who were hunting turkeys along the CDT. After they had passed us the previous night, I'm going to skip that, but I'm going to go with this. These Zunis basically told us that they had been coming to this campsite for 22 years in a row at this weekend. And they lived in Arizona, and this was sacred ground to them. And they were really hunting for turkeys here, and they wanted the feathers for the turkeys for their ceremonies back in Arizona. And we had a really good connection with them. We walked over to their campsite and engaged them in conversation and wanted to know, just, I do this a lot. I will go to people's campsites and just say hi, tell them what I'm doing when I'm on a long hike, and then let the thing open up to see where that might lead the conversation. And they basically told us that they had been coming there for 22 years, and we were the first CDT hikers to ever care enough to even walk over and talk to them. It was quite amazing. So what you're seeing here on the right is I'm reading from my book now. They showed us a little altar at the base of an oak tree with 2 carved stone fetishes of animals, one a cougar. There was also a very large ancient spearhead that had been placed in the middle of the stone animals. Little pieces of bread, you can see those white little clumps on the right, had been placed at the altar each morning as well. One of the men opened a spectacularly decorated pouch that had some type of religious or white cornmeal in it, used for rituals, before embarking on each day's hunt. They told us they were really hoping to kill a turkey. It was a heartfelt encounter for sure, and many photos were taken, addresses were exchanged. The oldest man blessed our journey through the wild country with a brief ceremony. They told us they loved us. my heart and soul experienced a deep connection with them. It was really a profound experience for me. I really thought it was amazing that we were shown all this stuff, and they did perform a little ceremony as well, and blessed us. Which, who knows? Maybe that's why we made the trail happen for ourselves. So I'm going to stop right now because this is the beginning of Colorado, and I know we're going to have some questions and answers. And Denise, I don't know if there are any questions we can take, one or two at this point before I move on to
Yeah.
Colorado. Do you have any questions?
I think that to do questions, now that I'm on the Zoom, it might disrupt your slideshow. So I have a feeling
Okay.
we should probably wait to the end.
Okay, I'll keep going.
Okay.
All right, that's fine. So we entered Colorado with a sense of foreboding. Let me go back one. So we were in Chama, New Mexico, ready to cross the border. We got on the internet, and what we did have at that point was the CDT 2013 group. People that were hiking the CDT used that to communicate like we do on the AT with the trail registers in the shelters. It was really wonderful. And there was a guy, Max Chill, who was pushing ahead of us, and we were following him. And he posted a really frightening video of the snow he was encountering in the southern San Juans. And it didn't look good at all. It was basically continuous elevation between 12,000 to 14,000 feet, and lots of snow, pure snow, deep snow. And we really were concerned with that. And we were just starting to enter Colorado, which looked okay. So we said, let's go. We don't see any snow here yet. So we began to move north. And then we started to see these kinds of things here. And we started to see that it was getting a little deeper as we went. And from there, the fields got bigger. And we were still not in the worst of it at this point here. It was really getting treacherous. And we had these huge cornices, these snow cornices that we had to cross to move, sometimes with a trail move from one side of these ridges to the other. And we met a hiker who later fell 20, this one was 20 feet high, the snow cornice, meaning a wall of snow, 20 feet high, almost vertical. And he fell and he got all scarred up, and we met him way up in I think, Wyoming, and he was still pretty rough looking from the fall that he had here. So this was really scaring us at that point. I don't have any photos of how treacherous it was up on the ridge. I was so freaked out by my experience there. We were post-holing in snow that was really deep. And we were post-holing, and at times you would drop down. Post-holing means that the snow is heated up so much that you'll sink through it. I have one situation where I started sliding down the hill like I was skiing, and I had my poles, and I've done this before. I kind of thought I could control it with my boots. And then at one point, one of my legs went right down, past right about to my knee, and I felt myself still being propelled forward from my momentum. I thought I was going to break and do a compound fracture of my knee. I was petrified. And at the last moment, the snow broke, and I just basically landed on my face. But we all looked at each other after that and said, we got to get off this ridge. This snow is too dangerous. I pulled out my Maine Gazetteer, and we brought a page for this one particular spot in the San Juans that showed us that there was a town called Platoro about 10 miles to the east of the Rockies, and we headed for that. And this is what we found: this really tiny little town. They rented us this cabin Train's feet were getting trench foot already from being soaked. That's what we're doing, drying out our feet at the top. And this was inside the place. But we were able at this point to take, we didn't want to go back up. We just studied the forest roads, and we said, we're going to head north to Wolf Creek Pass, and we're going to have to just go on these lower elevation roads to get there. And that's basically what we did. We ran to a couple spots that were down low. We were able to warm up. There were some campers that helped us out here. It was very cool. I also would like to talk to you a little bit about, just a second, I'm trying to get my notes. Yeah, so I want something to say about mindfulness and hiking. This is really something that I'm very curious about. And there's an excellent book by a guy called Robert Moore. It's called On Trails and Exploration. And Moore writes a paragraph that I think is what I'm totally in agreement with. Here we go. The chief virtue of trails is that their confining structure frees the mind up for more contemplative pursuits. Needless to say, I mostly failed. Looking back through my journal recently, this is Moore writing. I found that rather than spending my days in a state of serene observation, much of my time was given over to griping, fantasizing, worrying over logistics, and dreaming of food. Enlightened I was not, but overall I was as happy and healthy as I've ever been. That's my experience. I can't be thinking about spiritual things when I'm walking. That's splitting my attention. I can't multitask. I got to pay attention to where I'm walking, what's ahead, what I'm hearing around me. It's difficult enough just moving forward without having your mind engaged with a double pursuit of kind of like rusticating about something like that. So I was really curious to see that Moore actually said the same thing. So here we are headed into Creede, Colorado. It's June 3rd. In 1891, more than 10,000 people lived in this mining town. Right now, 300. So it's just a shadow of its former self. It was a great place to go. I really want to go back, but it's hard to get there. And a bunch of movies have used Creede for a location. And if you want to see what happens to this one particular segment of rail as it's going in there, check out Netflix's, there's a Western series they did called Godless. And it starred Michelle Dockery of Downton Abbey. It was filmed, the opening scene, which involves a train wreck and an explosion, was right at this point, which was fascinating to me. But we just had to keep going, and it was a nice stop, and we spent an overnight there. So this is June 21st. It's a day where I summited Mount Elbert, which is 14,300 feet. It was a side trip of 9 miles. I did it. I'm amazed that I did. Mount Elbert is the second tallest mountain in the continental USA after Mount Whitney. It was amazing to be up that high, and it was a clear day, and it was tough breathing, but it was a cool thing to do. So this is what happens when you're on the divide. Is on the eastern side of the divide, a lot of rain falls, and you see things like this cottonwood or aspen forest. And on the western side, it's like this. This is two sides of the same mountain range. This is a lot of the trail. There was a lot of this kind of like this kind of travel on the trail. Why I kind of had some problems start here with my teeth. I mean, I'm not kind of like screaming in pain here, but I basically got a tooth infection that I could not get a dentist to look at for about 4 weeks. And no matter what town I came to, there was either no dentist, or dentists were closed, or dentists were full, and I couldn't wait around. So I was sending these calls to my local dentist here in Camden, Dr. Day, and he was sending me prescriptions for heavy-duty antibiotics that I was just using to try and kill the pain. until I could have that tooth extracted, which, by the way, I never had extracted for the rest of the trip. I just kind of struggled with this. Here's an amazing a situation right here. This is the Great Divide in southern Wyoming that we have to walk through. So let me explain to you what's going on here. I'm trying to move. Okay, so the green line is the CDT. And let's look at it way down in the right-hand corner. You see it's a single line, and then it breaks, and then there's a green line going to the right, and it circles around, and then there's a green line going to the left, and it circles around. That's a split in the actual Continental Divide. Those are two mountain ranges that come back together again up in the left-hand corner. But there's no water. There's absolutely zero water anywhere on those perimeter. So what people do, and what the Oregon Trail did at this point, is they went right through this flat area straight ahead and connected the top portion to the bottom portion. It's 140 miles, and it looks like this. There's nothing there. It's one gigantic sage farm going for 140 miles with very sporadic water of extremely questionable quality. The only reason why we didn't get baked to a crisp is because it stayed mostly cloudy, cool, and windy as we walked through there. And believe me, we spent every waking moment walking through there, just, trying to finish up and move ahead. It was quite amazing. We ran into just one other guy there, and he was a Basque shepherd who could barely speak English. He was taking care of 8,000 sheep with 2 dogs. That was his job. He lived out there for years doing this. I have no idea what his life was like. He actually approached us in a gator. He had no extra water. He never brought us any. But it was an amazing thing to realize that there's someone living in the middle of this thing, and that sheep can sometimes somehow survive in it. Let's see. Okay, we started to enter grizzly country. This is heading into northern Wyoming. It's going to be grizzlies from here on, all through northern Wyoming, through picked them up in the Wind River Range, and it went all through Montana are grizzlies. They don't bother with groups of 3 or more. Thank God we were a group of 3 at that point. We made noise when we couldn't see around in brushy areas. We clearly separated eating from sleep. We would often eat late in the afternoon, and we would then hike for several more hours until dark. And then we would separate that so that we wouldn't generate odors of cooking food and all of that. And we all had bear spray on our chest straps. Encountered about 7 grizzlies out there, and some were quite close, and it was pretty terrifying. This is a picture of the Wind River Range. There's an alternate trail that actually goes to the top of that Teton up there. And this isn't the Teton. This is this incredible color rock of the Wind River Range, and this is what it looks like there. The trail is going along the side here of the water on the lower side. It's very cool to walk through there. This was a very curious thing. We thought someone had started a fire here, and the more we explored it, we realized we discovered a lightning strike that had ignited the ground here in a very remote area. We did the best we could to stop and try and extinguish. It was actually, you could see glowing coals in the earth. We knew water was pretty close, so we all dumped our water bottles here. We even peed on it the best we could because we just didn't want to have another forest fire start. But when you see about forest fires out west, this is how they start. There's lightning storms, thousands or hundreds of lightning strikes hit the ground, and then those generate fires, and that's how that all goes. Terrible place to turn an ankle. You really got to be careful out here. You've really got to focus. This is still in the winds. We're heading in now. We walked into Yellowstone, and this is through one of the populated areas, but the trail in the Yellowstone area only goes through a small portion of Yellowstone National Park. So it only spends 2 nights there, and then it exits you over to outside the park. And it's definitely not set up for walkers. 95% of the cars too are people that have rentals. There's no hitchhiking for us. We had no luck getting around there hitchhiking. Who's going to want to pick up 3 stinking guys that look like bums when you and your family are on vacation? It just isn't going to happen. So in the southern part of Yellowstone, you know, you hear about fires regenerating and that things come up after fires. This was an area that had a forest fire in 1989. So there were no usable trees that we could hang our bear bags from anywhere. There's no way you can hang a bear bag on these trees. There's no limbs. And so we resorted, this is very heavy bear area. We had to just kind of like put our food down at night, and then several hundred yards away is where we'd camp. And then in the morning, you know, we'd go back and get our food again. We didn't have any trouble losing food or encountering bears in these conditions. So we're about to exit the park right now. We were kind of adopted by 5 park rangers, and that's who those guys are, other than train on the porch. And they met us on the trail. They were doing what's called spraying noxious, they're getting rid of invasive species of plants there. This is a big thing that the rangers have to do. They want to keep this area pristine, and they're very vigorous about getting rid of any non-native plants. We also learned that this is the biggest bear area in the park, and they didn't want us to camp. So they asked us if we'd spend the night with them in this cabin, which was well fortified. When these doors closed, they had these huge metal kind of like slides and kind of latches that prevented, and sometimes they said we need to kind of do the same to the windows if bears really want to get in here. But it was wonderful listening to their stories and hearing all this stuff, and they cooked for us, and it was just like kind of a cool location. That's called a Sportman Patrol Cabin. Okay, here's a really cool thing that happened to us as well. We took a variant to spend more time. Variants are, the great thing about the CDT is it's not just one trail. It's like there are places where you can choose your route. It's like a choose your own adventure story. Sometimes there are 3 different routes that you can choose when you hit a spot. This was one of the variants. It's called the Big Sky variant. And it's southern Montana and northern Wyoming. It cuts out the Montana-Idaho border, which was having massive wildfires the year we were there. And we would have had to avoid it anyhow. So it took us through most of the Yellowstone, and then we went through the Gallatin Forest, the Petrified Forest, the Spanish Peaks, and Tobacco Root Mountains. And it was about 300 miles where we were on our own, just devising our route to link up again with the official CDT when it kind of hit northern parts into Montana. I want to paint you a picture. This is a pretty cool little video I want to show you of just improvising in the bob. Good work. We don't like to take our shoes off. Okay, train. Look at this, look at this. Get back. You're gonna get wet, Tom. Get back, you're gonna get wet, Tom. Crane is 6'3", so he's able to make those spans. Anyhow, that's improvising in the Bob. Pretty cool. So let me kind of get my notes. I'm still going on here. Bob Marshall Wilderness, I don't have too many slides of it because there was a huge fire in the Bob. And the thing I really wanted to see in there is this feature called an escarpment called the Chinese Wall. It's spectacular. It's 1,000 feet wall, 1,000 feet high. It's a cliff that extends for 22 miles in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, which is millions of wilderness acres, and we couldn't get to it. The trail was closed. The fire was on the base of the wall. So we had to miss this whole wall thing. But there were other things that we encountered as well. What this is a picture of what I discovered one morning. So we're sleeping, right? And I woke up in the morning and I got up and I looked and I saw that there was a bear print right outside my tent that wasn't there at night when we went to bed at night. So there was a bear that was stalking around my tent, and I didn't hear it because I was dead asleep. Lewis heard it, and he heard branches breaking, and I don't know how much freaking out he did. But this is the kind of thing that you have to deal with on the trail. You have to find some way to modify anxiety. It's no place to start getting worried about what's going to happen. You have to walk in the present. And it's real training for being able to handle anxiety as it comes up. You just have to be aware that if you keep fantasizing and running tapes in your head of what could go wrong, you're going to be off the trail fairly soon because a lot can go wrong. If one of those things go wrong, you're probably okay. But if 2, 3, or any more go wrong, you're not going to be okay. You're going to be in trouble. So the last of these pictures, because I want to leave time for some questions, are of Glacier National Park. Clearly, Glacier National Park, I've been to a lot of national parks, and this is the most spectacular national park I've ever seen. It's the headwaters for streams that go to the Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, they go to Hudson Bay. This affects the waters. A huge section of North America are fed by the headwaters in this place. And it's got fantastic features. It's got the Going to the Sun Road, which is a car road and a bicycling road. And so it's just a phenomenal place. And what you do when you get there as a hiker is you have to go to the rangers, and they make you an itinerary. You can't be on your own in the park. They assign you campsites, and we got assigned 6 campsites. Some were as much as 22 miles apart. Others were like 6 miles apart. So it made no sense the way that they did it. But because we were there, and a lot of people want to be there, it's what you have to do. And unfortunately, you just have to work around it. But we didn't care. It was very spectacular at this point. Just huge, wide open areas. You'll often see bears. Snow started coming early as we were trying to finish up. I want to read to you from the end because we're very close to the end. So we reached the patrol cabin almost 5 miles ahead. Then it got interesting. The terminus of the CDT was still 3.6 miles away, but all 3 of us moved so fast through segment 3, which is how we kind of broke up our last day, that we were practically running. We had communicated none of the sense of urgency beforehand. It was just what we knew to do. Wizard and I had done this together twice before and knew the drill. Train had been there too at the end of the PCT. And we all bucked up and set a very rapid pace toward the end. I was sure that I would see the terminus monument from a distance. Nope. Then all of a sudden it appeared, just appeared, 2 miniature Washington Monument-shaped pylons close to a lake on a faint rise. I screamed to Wizard, "Oh my God, there it is." The intensity of happiness that I experienced at that moment can't be framed by words. I didn't know it right then, but I did know My standing there was an event that I would be mulling over for a long time. I didn't fully understand where the doors ahead of me lay, but I so much believed that my life's travels would be on good roads. So that was the spirit that we finished with. And this shows a picture of me at the end. This is the kind of nondescript end of the trail. And that's Tiki Man, my water bottle, who also I made a little triple crown for. He was the only piece of gear that survived the 6 years of focused hiking that I did to try and complete the Triple Crown. And do you know what? He eventually had to be retired. He fell and he sprung a leak. So Tiki Man has his own little altar here at home for me. But essentially that's it. I'm done. I'm ready to take some questions and answers. This is a book that I wrote. It's available. I believe Maine Sport has it. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it from me. I don't know why Cool is down there, but it's also, I sell it also through the Continental Divide Trail Association website, and any books I sell through them, I send them back $5 too, and keep them in going. So thank you very much for listening. I'm totally willing, and I wish I show my face here, and I don't know how to do it or how this thing happened. I've been trying to get it off there. But thank you. Denise, do you
Okay.
have any questions for me?
Yeah, I think I'm going to look under the question and answer section. So I don't see at this point, if you want to submit a question and I can read it to Tom, please do that.
Or people can just turn on their microphone, or people can
Or you
turn on
can
their
unmute
microphone and
ask
speak their
him. Yeah.
question.
So I'll open it
Yeah.
up for questions.
Any questions out there?
I'd like to ask what your pack weight was.
I would say, if I remember right, it was under 20 pounds. Right now, I've got a kit that's about 17, and this was pretty much similar to that without food or water. But what I got to say is there are times when I had to pack 10 days worth of food with low water conditions. So 10 days worth of food, generally I carry 2 pounds a day. So that's 20 extra pounds. Now we're up to 37 pounds. And then there are definitely sections, unfortunately, the sections that are longest, especially when you're up above on the frozen ridge at 12 to 14,000 feet, you got to carry your own water. So it's usually 5 more quarts of water, another 10 pounds, probably 45 to 50 at times, and then down from there. Yeah.
Okay,
and averaging 19 miles a day.
I have a question that came in about your shoe wear. What did you wear for shoes?
At the time, my brother was costing manager my brother Roy was costing manager from New Balance. And I had real success with a pair of military boots that were made for the desert in Iraq and Afghanistan that I took particularly because I wanted to try them for the desert. And they worked so well for me. I didn't get any blisters on this trip that I had him send me, or I was able to get from New Balance boots. And my boots generally lasted for 500 miles. So I needed about 5 pairs of boots to complete the trail. That's what I use, and it was successful for me. I don't want any waterproof boots, even now. I mean, I'll wear waterproof boots in Maine in the spring, and then maybe right now when it's really rainy and all, but otherwise I like to have unlined boots and shoes and trail runners so that I can have no moisture on my feet. Moisture is what causes blisters and contributes to, like all kinds of problems in a sealed atmosphere of like a plastic sock. I haven't had a blister in 2 through hikes.
Wow. So we have another question. Yeah. How would you compare the CDT to your previous hikes of the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail?
It was much more similar to the Pacific Crest Trail. It was much less similar to the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail is so public. It's one of the most heavily traveled trails in the world. You're seeing people every day. There were times when we were out here, I looked it up. We didn't see anybody else hiking for 3 weeks one time, not even one person. And I've heard it said that as late as 2010, if you go off on the CDT and you hike solo, you may not see another hiker for the whole trip. So the isolation and the lack of resources is really the difference between this and the Appalachian Trail. And people ask me, would you do this again? No way I would do it again. I'm 72 now. I'm not sure I could do it. I mean, I'm still trying to stay in good shape. I still hike, but you can die out here, and people die every year on this trail. I mean, they fall off those ridges, they drown. I don't think anybody's ever been killed by a bear, but I know people that have been attacked by bears. So I consider myself very lucky. I might do the AT again. I don't know. I kind of fantasize about it. I still like doing long trails. I do shorter trails now. But it demands that you walk longer distances. If you want to finish this trail as a through hike, you've got to, on the AT, I average 12 miles a day over 5.5 months to finish. Here, you've got to average 19 or 20 miles a day to finish these trails in a single season, which is really hard for most people.
Yeah, so there was a
I would
question.
say if you get older.
Yeah, I think
Right.
the last question was, is the CDT the most physically demanding of the three? I think you answered that. Would you say?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, really? It's really most physically demanding, yes. For me, it was. Yeah.
And then there was another question about, what are you hiking now? What was your most recent hike? But but she also was asking,
Well,
you did CDT in 2013, is that correct?
yeah. Yeah, I did it in 2013. I had some surgery this April. I replaced my shoulder, I had a complete shoulder replacement, and I really couldn't really take any chances with that recovery. But I at the end of August, I did a 200-mile through hike across England. I hiked from coast to coast in England, and I did that in it was a little less than, it was about 2 weeks that I did that. And then I also, and I talked to you about this, Denise, because you had the same experience. I made the stupid mistake of hiking 100 miles of the long trail the last week of September into the first week of October, fantasizing that I'd be in this beautiful foliage, but instead I got rain the first 3 nights. I was lonely. I spent several nights in shelters alone at 6:30 in the dark, and it was slippery, and it wasn't that pleasant. So I did a little hiking. I continue to want to through hike, and I continue to try and stay in shape to do that. And I really want to get up to Newfoundland next summer and do maybe 2 weeks on the Avalon Peninsula. There's a wonderful trail I did part of called the East Coast Trail there. And you're hiking on the edge of spectacular scenery for 200-300 miles.
All right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think we got the questions. Let me just check one more spot.
Okay, well, I would encourage people that just to jot down my email there, and if they're wanting to consult with me, I don't mind helping people out. I mean, I like what the Appalachian Trail, the AMC is doing. I've had a great time in the Namakanta for the past year or so, even riding my bike around, doing some bike packing there, and I really like the expansion that they've done up there, and I'm willing to help anybody who wants to continue this conversation.
Great. Well, thank you, Tom. And I really enjoyed it. I listened to this a couple of years ago, but it was really great to see it a second time.
Yeah,
So
I wish people could have seen me. I think I might have been appeared for a few
Well, it's a
seconds or
picture of you, but it
not.
has my name on it, so a little bit of both.
You're right. I don't know how that happened. That's
Don't either.
what the problem is. How did your name get on my picture?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh God, who knows? Hey,
Who knows?
this is what
All right. Well, thank
happens.
you all for
This
joining
is
us.
just like the trend.
Okay, thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back probably in the month of February with another online presentation. You can watch out for it being advertised on the Maine chapter website for the Appalachian Mountain Club. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks,
Bye.
folks.